Here we are, second episode.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be lying if I said that this was what I planned on, what I wanted to do for the second episode of the show, but because you and I, got into a rant about it yesterday, and it's something that I actually am sort of passionate about in the world of film and television, and I guess to a lesser extent music. Let's actually talk about what the topic is, which is...
Cheeseburgers.
Which is the representations of the South in film and television.
Yes.
Hollywood doesn't understand the South at all.
Right.
And I don't want it to seem like this is like I'm a huge pro-South, yeah, fuck yes, South, Confederacy all the way sort of thing, because I'm not. I mean,
because it does annoy me with Southerners to where they're like, Southern pride. I was like, you don't have to have Southern pride. You can have North Carolina pride or whatever, but because there's no South. We're all a part of the same country, It
is, and I mean, of course, we're regions divided into things, and it's a mental state like it is with the North and the West, and
but they're not. So
else.
The North are like yeah, I'm a Northerner. The North, we're so Northern pride. They're like Boston pride or New York pride. Why can't we just be like Raleigh pride, Asheville pride?
That's a good point. I mean, I never really thought about that, but yeah, that people from the South have this mentality that the South is just better all the way around, which it isn't. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that it needs to be stereotyped like it is. Sort of the thing that set it off for me, and I think for you, is how people, well, specifically actors, do a Southern accent in a movie or TV show.
It's not, hey, y'all seen that baseball game of yesterday's?
Yeah, it's like that. And of course, you're going to, the different regions you go, and I can really only speak for North Carolina because, obviously we're from North Carolina. Each region has its own dialect, and the further you go in this county, especially, the thicker the accents get. A lot of TV shows and movies kind of pull from is that really thick accent. I guess it's somewhat of a stereotype, but growing up in the South, you grow up around people who really like to tell stories.
Yeah.
Like, really like to tell stories. Like, you go talk to your grandfather, he'll talk your ear off for 4 hours about beans or something, but... you talk to somebody like that, and they're going to have a really thick Southern accent, and it's going to be like, yeah, back in 1924, boy, we go out and get us some beans, and we have ourselves a good time. And Lefty was a shifty guy. We didn't trust Lefty very much, but every once in a while he come around. We like to have him around, and he's funny. He tell good jokes and things like that. And we had some beans with Lefty. I mean, that's a very bad made-up example, but, that's kind of how old Southern men, especially from our grandparents' age, talk and communicate. They just start rambling and telling stories and things like that. And it's really kind of remarkable when you think about it, because they're really they've honed such good storytelling skills that they could write a really good book.
Yeah. But
Hollywood never gets that. They just are interested in the silly accent because people can identify it quickly.
Even with like a serious character, like in like Bones or Closer or something. Mm-hmm. Not Closer, but Closer.
The Closer, yeah. And yeah, exactly. And she's even the character from The Closer is supposed to be from North Carolina, from Asheville or Raleigh or something. And her accent on that show sounds exactly like every other accent you see in a movie. It's exaggerated. It's like, my mama once told me... People in Hollywood, like executives and directors and writers, are missing the opportunity to tell really interesting stories about people from the South without caricaturing. And this sort of stereotyping started pretty early on from the birth of cinema. You have a movie like Birth of a Nation, which is one of the most racist movies of all time, with Confederate soldiers and the Ku Klux Klan and everything, and that sort of became like a measuring stick of what the South is, at least according to the movies. I mean, it's evolved from that, obviously. A lot of movies and TV shows coming out now want to constantly use some sort of version of the South that represents Southerners as, if not necessarily racist, but really passionate about the Civil War, or good old boys who like to go out and shoot guns and have a good time and listen to country music and drink Jack Daniels, which of course like all stereotypes, there are certain truths in there, but that's not even close to being what it's like to actually live in the South.
Right.
And it's kind of it's just really sad that there aren't.
Like my dad is like, you can say my dad like to hunt. He's pretty much redneck, but his actually favorite type of music is Motown.
Yeah, exactly. And you have lots of people like that. Not all Southern people like country music. I mean,
he likes country music too.
Oh, of course.
Country music isn't not even country anymore.
No, it isn't. It's very
pop
influenced, and sometimes rap, which doesn't make any sense to me. But
Jason Aldean.
Don't get me started. Anyway. Okay, you know that movie Sweet Home Alabama?
Yeah.
With Reese Witherspoon?
Yeah.
I hate that movie.
Yes.
I hate that movie. Because it's all about the Southern girl who moved to the big city, big New York City, everybody. And she forgot about her family and her roots in the South. And I was watching that movie. That movie came on TV one time, and I was sitting there watching it, and I was just yelling at the TV because it so annoyed me that this is how the director and the writer thought the South was, or needs to be represented at least on screen. Now, granted, it took a very pro-South stance.
Yeah. But
it's still, it's like it overcorrected for its for its stereotyping, because it used a lot of those same stereotypes, but in a more quote unquote positive way. There's that part at the end of the movie, like towards the end of the movie, when Reese Witherspoon's character is, wants to get married in her hometown, and her husband to be is his mother's like a senator or something like that.
Yeah.
And so they bring New York City to this small town in Alabama.
Uh-huh.
And they have this montage shot of all the townsfolk like sitting around watching these big semi trucks come from New York, and they're all like, "What's going on here? This ain't the South. This ain't the South. This is New York. What's wrong with this girl?"
Because there's the South, and then there's New York. It's just there's two things in the world: it's the South and New York.
If it ain't the South, it's New York. But and it's like they were treating these people like they've never ever been to a city ever, or seen, I don't know, a movie. Why do you feel the need to comment on people reacting to a quote-unquote big city wedding when they probably already know that this character's been living outside the South anyway? So that's one thing. And then the movie kind of ends with Reese Witherspoon remembering her Southern roots and punching the evil senator lady in the face, and she has the line, she says something along the lines of, "You don't mess with my mama," and punches her. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I see what you're getting at here. I know that you probably have encountered somebody from the South who told you a story involving punching somebody because they were messing with their mama. Again, that's not what makes the South the South in the movies.
But even when they're portraying a really like in Bones, that character is very, very intelligent, because that's one of the things that where they were like, because everyone thought he was stupid, or whatnot, and he was actually he would like outsmart some of the other people, but it was like a thing of like, it was basically a thing is don't judge people, basically the moral of that little thing or whatnot, which is cool. He didn't have to be like, well, y'all and he had like some sort of like crazy backwoods metaphor for everything.
Yeah, that's another thing, is that they always seem to. That kind of goes back to what I was saying about the storytelling, is that we grew up in that kind of culture, and that's where I think that's kind of where they get it from, is that old Southern men have and women have an anecdote for everything, but not all Southern people have that quick response to where they can relate every single situation, at least on TV, back to something that their granddaddy did out in the middle of the field, the tobacco field, or something like that. The audience is just sort of conditioned nowadays to when a Southern character comes along, they're going to have like Southern. They're going to have a Southern charm. They're going to be very well mannered and treat women right. You know, if on a popular TV show at least. And
well, that boy's as spastic as an epileptic on the 4th of July.
yeah, exactly. and say something like that. And you know, it's because it draws people into the it's used more in television than it is in movies, so it gets people into it gets the ratings for the show.
Yeah.
And something like that, and it just feels like people in that industry just aren't interested in treating people from the South with the same level of respect that they give to not necessarily Northern people, but like just anybody else that isn't from this region. And
because there's nobody that doesn't have some sort of accent.
I don't really have much of an accent, and you have more of an accent than I do, but your accent isn't even all that thick.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the thing, is that people need to realize that each area of whatever Southern state there is has its own dialect. So we're not all going to have a twang.
No, I don't know, man.
I don't know, man.
Twang right now.
I can count the number of movies or TV shows that actually gets the South right on one hand. And that's Friday Night Lights, the TV show, the movie Junebug with Amy Adams, and Sling Blade, and that's just because of Billy Bob Thornton.
I love Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, I do too.
And I mean, it gets put in there with other sports movies like that. A lot of people don't like sports movies, but that's more than a sports movie.
It is. But I'm talking more about the TV show than I am the movie. But the movie does do a good job with that. Like it also gets it right for the most part in terms of how things function in the South. But the TV show goes into more depth with it. And
it has especially a lot of the shots of like main streets and stuff. It has a hint of the destruction of the South by capitalism. Yeah.
Like there's that scene in the movie that takes place outside of Walmart, which both is product placement, but is also very accurate for the South, because Walmart is a religion here. A lot of the people I went to high school with, they'd be like, "I love me some Walmart. If I'm not at church on Sunday, I'm at Walmart." Whereas I'm just thinking, if I'm not at church on Sunday, I'm sleeping. But that show or that movie, Friday Night Lights, that is, or Sling Blade, and it benefits from people who, at least in the case of Sling Blade,
I think Explosions in the Sky gets the South too.
To a certain extent.
Well, they are from the South.
They're from Texas, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and they get it, and they put that into that was the perfect music for that movie.
Oh, absolutely. And they took it one step further when they did the TV show by having the guy who did the score for the show just kind of emulate Explosions in the Sky. Mm-hmm. Like it's very guitar driven, not necessarily the same percussion brilliance that the band has, but as far as the guitar sound goes, it's almost dead on.
Yeah.
And you're right. It whenever you hear, or at least when I hear that stuff, I think the sun's setting over tobacco fields and old barns and things like that.
Yeah.
And that, while is very romantic and poetic of the South, is at least a little bit more of an accurate representation than, she thinks my tractor's sexy!
And I don't want to think that we're just like, everybody's being mean to the South. But, yeah, I mean, there's people that are freaking Southern as hell. And they're like really thick accents. But unless you're those people, you can't do it well. It's kind of like
I know
someone without there's like someone with a really thick Cockney accent from London, mm-hmm. like someone from California probably can't do that really, really thick Cockney accent. They might can do a basic British accent, but not the really thick ones. You're gonna need somebody from.
I know what you mean. You kind of brings it back to Sling Blade a little bit, because that movie Billy Bob Thornton wrote and directed, obviously, and he shot it in Louisiana or Alabama, something like that.
Yeah.
And he filled it with actors who Dwight Yoakam, who's clearly a Southern country star, and all these other people, these really wonderful actors, really, and he got that one guy who owns the store that he ends up working for, and all that, and like because he grew up in the South and is from the South. He really gets that culture, and he represented it accurately in that movie.
Yeah.
Like there's a scene, there's a part in that movie that I've always liked where he's going in to interview for the for a job. Billy Bob Thornton's character is, and he's talking to the store owner, who's kind of the stereotype that we've been talking about. The guy who has an anecdote for everything and has a really thick accent, talks fast, and things like that. But he's a fantastic character in the movie, and he was a non-actor when Billy Bob Thornton cast him. He just had kind of one of those infectious personalities that he had to put him up on screen.
Yeah.
But anyway, and in the scene, the guy who owns the store is talking to Billy Bob Thornton and talking about how he killed because he was talking about the kid that he had killed that put him in the mental institution and all that, and the guy basically said, "I remember that kid, and you know what? I probably would have done the same thing that you did eventually at one point, so it doesn't bother me that much." And essentially is what he was saying, and that was so true. Like I remember seeing that, and I was like, "Yeah, he gets these characters because that is true." Some in the South, there are certain moral stances that are just sort of concrete, death and violence and things like that. There's a very eye for an eye sort of thing that people have in this area.
Yeah.
And whether or not I agree with it is another thing, but I at least appreciated the fact that he wasn't afraid to show these characters say things that are somewhat controversial or just morally non-acceptable anywhere else. Like you'd have to be in the South basically to see that and kind of understand what that mindset is like.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that. You could probably look at the scene and say that it was stereotypical, but I don't think so, and it would be beside the point.
But the thing
anyway.
about stereotypes, when you say, "Oh, don't stereotype people," we're not saying the stereotypes aren't true. The stereotypes are true.
Or at least partially.
But the thing about that you don't want to do is you don't want to say that like everybody.
Well, yeah, and that is true. Is the fact that
stereotypes are half truth.
It's
not because people get stereotypes wrong. It's because there's no absolutes. Hell, I like Coca-Cola with peanuts, but not to say that every Southerner likes Coca-Cola and peanuts.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be like, if you're like, "Oh, you're from the South, you like Coca-Cola and peanuts," I'm like, "How dare you?" Stereotypical.
No, yeah, and that's very true, and you basically get that with all movies. There's these shots in like Armageddon where they're called the Americana shots, which is just little vignettes across the country after everyone finds out that the asteroid's going to hit and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're beautiful cinematography wise, like they're really well put, like compositionally are great and fairly well directed, and things like that. But there's a shot of an old farmer guy with his wife and kids going into their little storm cellar below their house.
Yeah.
When they realize the asteroid's going to hit, and I every time I see that shot, I'm like, well, first of all, that storm cellar isn't going to do shit for you, and two, not everybody in the South has a storm cellar, and we definitely don't live in backwoods houses off the main highway like they show in these movies. Of course, we know people who are like that, who are gonna really kind of fulfill that stereotype. They're gonna be living in their mama's house that has been in their family for generations and whatnot.
Yeah.
Movies and TV that show the more modern side of the South, go to the cities sometime, or
they think everybody's just drinking and shooting and shooting and eating,
shooting and hollering. Like I was talking about earlier, it started with Birth of a Nation, but it really
this is a sign that I think someone was actually trying to shoot the storm yesterday. Like the storm started rolling in, it started getting really bad, and all of a sudden we heard pow, 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 pow. I was just like, it was like, get away from me, you aliens.
That's hilarious. Anyway, going back to being on topic, a lot of these stereotypes started with Birth of a Nation, but it didn't really become perfected until Gone with the Wind.
Mm-hmm.
That movie, even more so than Birth of a Nation, did more damage for how we view the South through media. Yeah, well, I mean, have you seen Gone with the Wind?
Bits and pieces.
Long time ago.
But he slaps her at the end, don't he?
I mean, he slaps her at some point. Not at the end, but frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn is the famous line from the end of the movie.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
But and there's the famous burning of Atlanta that's shown in the movie, which is historically accurate, but that kind of set up a lot of bad blood between the North and the South for during the Civil War and afterwards.
Well, they represent a lot of times in movies that like, oh, the North is bad and the South is just the good old boy good guys, and they're just picking on the middle man.
Well, that's the mentality of just people around here now. Like, this is another thing that I want to touch on, but I might get to it in a little bit. People from the South have a tendency to instead of rebelling against these stereotypes, kind of embrace them, which just sort of perpetuates it. Especially now, I mean, whatever you want to call it now, it's still technically country. That you can say that a lot of modern country songs, music videos are also softcore porn in a way.
Yeah.
But they're appealing to a very specific sect of people, people from the South, obviously,
and they're trying to appeal to, say, like in like Bamboozled, of how they make their little minstrel show that's appealing to.
No, I see what you're saying, and that's a very good point.
It's appealing to other people. Like, the country music is appealing to, say, New Yorkers that enjoy watching Southern people make fools of themselves. To
an extent, but country music is also, a nationwide, and I guess to an extent worldwide. I think what you just said about the minstrel show mentality can apply to country music and country music videos too.
Yeah.
A good example is that Gretchen Wilson song from, I don't know, about a decade ago, where I'm a redneck woman, I ain't no high class broad, or whatever it is. I hate that song, but you watch the music video and she's got a bunch of Southern girls standing around her and they're all shouting out hell yeah, and she's riding a four-wheeler through the mud and taking a truck and going out mudding and things like that.
Yeah.
And I saw this random guy at Buffalo Wild Wings one time.
Yeah.
That video, the Gretchen Wilson video, came on, or the song came on the jukebox.
Yeah.
And he was singing along to it and everything, and then he started talking about how he loved that music video because he's like, she's straddling that four-wheeler going through the mud, and oh man, that sounds good. He says this, and I'm like, you're not helping. You really aren't, because that's what people see as the South. That video is what people associate with Southern women and Southern men, is that we all want our girls to be, like, from the male perspective, we all want our girls to be girls who drink Jack Daniels and go out and party all the time and take their shirts off at redneck bars. And
basically, they want a woman. It's like they put too much on the woman's plate, because it's like the woman don't even know what the fuck they're supposed to do. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, you want me to be all manly and do the manly thing when you want me to be, but then you also want me to be a womanly woman and cook.
Yeah.
Up. It's like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Is that a lot of guys from the South are attracted to the tomboy type, but they also want the woman.
I'm attracted to the tomboy type too, because I was like, hey, on a Valentine's Day, I was like trying to be nice. I was like, hey, how about we do like a mixture thing? Like, I pick out an action movie and you can pick out a romantic movie. She's like, fuck that. Let's just pick two action movies.
Exactly. And and this goes back to how you see it through the media, is that the Southern woman has to be depicted in pretty much two specific ways. It's either the tomboy or the Southern belle.
Yeah.
And of course, things get a little mix. They mix things around a little bit. I think with the closer, she's got the accent of a Southern belle, but she's got the attitude of a tomboy. But even still, you've only just got those two things put together. Like Friday Night Lights, the TV show, where the main the wife of the coach, she's very much like a real Southern woman. One who's popular. She's put upon a lot because she's in a very high standing socially, because she's the coach's wife, and she handles that role like I've seen all Southern women do, with a smile on her face, and she's always got, there's always a party or something going on at her house for the football team, and she's always out there cooking burgers and steaks and everything, playing the Southern host, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But then, behind closed doors, it's slowly driving her insane because it's a lot of pressure and all this other stuff, and she bitches about it to her husband, and she yells at him, and then she cries, and has a lot of wine or something like. Well, she doesn't necessarily cry, but she does have a lot of wine.
She's having a lot of wine.
But my point is that every time I've seen an episode of that show and I see her character, like, I feel that's a character I feel like the writers understood and got, and they got it right. But so I think it's entirely possible to be honest to a character without resorting to stereotyping if they're from the South.
Yeah.
And I think it's just sad that that nobody seems to want to do that kind of character, because they're better characters too.
Yeah.
Like, whenever I see a Southern female character come up on screen somewhere, I usually have her pegged within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Talk with a Southern accent, and everybody, mostly men, are gonna, think it's adorable and think that she's, just a pretty old...
She's naive.
She's naive and things like that. And then she has... And it usually, for some reason, always goes through, like, a police show or something like that. She's gonna go in and interrogate the big bad guy and use her Southern wit and charm and common sense and slap him around.
Or she's
verbally.
going to be the naive. They think she's stupid or whatever, but she's going to be the ugly girl that takes off her glasses, and all of a sudden you figure out she's hot.
And then my Shyamalan comes out as, what a twist, but anyway.
What?
Nothing. You can cut that part. But and the thing of it is that there's never going to be an accurate representation of any group on screen, or nobody's ever going to be happy with any representation of a group on screen, I should say.
I don't know if stereotypes are half-truths that don't apply to everyone but some, or if some people have heard about the stereotypes and just embrace them subconsciously.
Yeah, I think they're... Yeah,
like there might be a redneck that goes to NASCAR and stuff, and all of a sudden he figures out, you know what? I actually don't like NASCAR.
Yeah. And you kind of bring up a good point, is that, the media has the power to influence somebody's culture without them ever realizing it. We grew up, in an area with a lot of rednecks and Southern people, but we didn't start really, I guess, actively withdrawing from that lifestyle until we realized that there was a world outside of...
There was a world outside of being the stereotypical redneck in the South.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like we I'm going to get away for this and I'm going to go to New York City where everybody's a lot more culture.
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
culture here.
There's culture here, and we, not to go the entire hipster route, but we started going and listening to indie bands or bands that were popular but not popular with the group of people that were around.
It's not like, we listen to indie bands. It just happened to be considered indie, but we didn't know it was that.
Yeah.
We just like, this sounds really good. This sounds better than...
Yeah, and that's the thing. We were, whether we realize it or not, we were looking for that thing that related to us.
Like when we were in 8th grade, there was something about that we figured out, we actually like stuff that sounds like Semisonic and Dave Matthews more than we like stuff that sounds like something that was popular around that time. But we still knew that we definitely liked stuff like Dave Matthews and Semisonic and
better,
like Harvey Danger and all that kind of stuff, and The Verve and things like that. We really liked what
Yeah, it kind of became our
late '90s, early 2000s indie
and
rock.
And it sort of became the foundation for what we started seeking out when we started actively listening to different types of music.
Like, because I'll listen to like some country song on the radio and be like, why don't I like this and I do like this? What's the difference? If I listen to a song that definitely sounds country, like from an indie perspective, of like, why do I like John Prine but I do not like Toby Keith?
Yeah.
Or Garth Brooks or something, which there are certain Garth Brooks that I do kind of like, but
yeah, I mean, guilty pleasures are guilty pleasures.
Yeah, but why do I like that versus that? Like, because I'll go ahead and tell you, like, if I'm listening to a December song and then all of a sudden there's a song that has a steel guitar in it, I'm like, hell yeah, man, that sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But then it sounds annoying in the country song. Why does it sound annoying in the country song?
But not on, yeah.
Not in another, but it's still, the steel guitar is still played to sound
and I think
Americana or folky.
And I think part of that is because we're part of this culture, whether we like it or not. We are part of this thing called the South, and I don't actively like a lot of country music, but like you, I like the older stuff. I like John Prine, like you just said, or Johnny Cash, or Merle Haggard, or Chris Christopherson, or the list will go on, or just regular old Hank Williams.
Yeah.
And I think what it is that we grew up with that sound, and we like the bluegrassy sound because it feels more.
And then and that also it pisses me off because I'm like, bluegrass is really good, and people are like, oh, I like country, but I can't stand that real twangy like bluegrass stuff. I'm like, have you really fucking listened to it?
Yeah.
And it pisses me off because it's like you like country as long as it sound. It's like I like country as long as it don't sound like country.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I know what you mean, because like the earliest country music, the good country music, basically, it had a very distinct sound. It was very much of this region, but it never felt like, and it was telling stories of this region, but it also never felt like it was trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator. It was trying to reach the masses because, they wanted to be celebrities.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you have to tell stories in your songs that people are interested in. So the best country artists of that era told really good stories that related to everybody in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, not everybody, but the people who
like Bob Dylan sang songs about New York City when he first started.
Yeah, but Bob Dylan was heavily influenced by
Woody Guthrie.
Woody Guthrie, thank you. And I don't know if you want to consider him a country artist, but he definitely has country in his songs, and he.
But definitely and it comes back to it that I like folk. I definitely like folk more than country. Sometimes I can get to where I'll be listening to John Prine, and after a while I get kind of annoyed and I'll be like, I'm tired of listening to John Prine, and I want to hear something more folky, because there's definitely when I listen to a song that's like acoustic guitar and a fiddle, and there's definitely a different feel to like a folk song that's using those same folk instruments than like a country song. Like the country music today, it's like they're using the folk instruments, but they fuck it up.
Yeah.
They have fiddles, and they have steel guitars, and they have dobros, and they're playing it like pop songs, and like...
Yeah. It takes real talent to play those instruments and play them well. And, we've got wonderful Southern writers, like Faulkner and Mark Twain and, just a whole bunch of them, Ambrose Bierce, people like that, who, they got it, I mean, obviously, because they're from the South.
Yeah.
But they, especially with Faulkner, brought in the idea, this kind of gothic mystique that the South has, which it does.
Yeah, it's like where the South is like Faulkner. It's so. It kind of gives you that swamp murder.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like almost creepy. And
oh, very much so. Oftentimes it is very creepy, but it's also beautifully written.
Yeah.
And just I don't want to wax philosophic on Faulkner right now, but he is an amazing writer, and I think if people,
if we really sat down and really wrote something for like a next Rocco C movie, we should definitely try to like make a movie that portrays this gothic mystique to where like how kind of George Washington portrayed.
Mm-hmm. And that's another good movie that takes place in the South. I mean, that one. I mean, I guess I guess you know it's this. We know it takes place in the South because it was shot in Winston-Salem, and everything. But I don't know how people outside of this region would view that movie, and if they automatically know where it actually takes place in, because it uses very urban landscapes and
like some of my favorite folk songs are songs about murder.
Oh yeah, some of the best songs in the world are about murder. Folsom Prison Blues. But or just
it's more of a feeling than anything else.
Well, and that actually, oddly enough, that's a good way of describing the South. At least the best art that portrays the South, it's a feeling more than anything else. It's it's this thing that you can't it's a force that you have to kind of reckon with, and I think that's and I kind of think
kinda
that's
like LeBron James.
Yes, the South is the LeBron James of the United States. Anyway. But anyway, and I think that's probably kind of what the worst representations of the South in popular culture is trying to get across, that it's this force that needs to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm.
But they go about it all completely wrong.
But they see it more of as like a surface thing. It's not as with the South, it's more abstract.
I like that idea that the South is a feeling more than anything, or that it's a lot more. It's much more of an abstract idea. I think one of my favorite shows of all time, and I know one of your favorite shows of all time, is Freaks and Geeks.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we like that show is because it's the most accurate and most honest portrayal of high school for us, at least.
Even though it's set in the 70s.
It's set in the 80s, 1980s, so essentially still the 70s.
Yeah.
But the reason we like that show so much is because we made connections with the characters, and we could see ourselves in those characters.
Yeah.
Whereas I watch a movie set maybe in North Carolina, maybe in Alabama, maybe in Georgia, I don't know, and I can't relate to any of those characters. Like, I love The Walking Dead. It's a great show, and I
they portray the South really well, and that's why the show is so fucking scary to me. It's because it's not like all of a sudden it's like, boo, zombie, mm-hmm. or like, there's guts everywhere or whatever.
Yeah.
It's because it's so emotional.
Yeah.
And that's why it makes it scary. It's not scary because it's scary as zombies. It's scary because this is people reacting to the.
Yeah, and they utilize the on location shoots as well as they can, which makes it that much better. But also because those characters, some of them are from the South. A lot of them are British, oddly enough, but some of them are actually Southern actors. For the most part, they feel real. They're not. There's some stereotypes, but they're not as bad as your average show.
Yeah.
I think the writers and the creators of the show really kind of are starting to understand the area that they're shooting in, because they actually shoot it in Georgia.
Yeah.
It's not like it's something that you are hyper aware of while watching it. Like I'm never watching an episode of Walking Dead and like, that's not how it would be in the South. But it's nice to know that they're taking those characters seriously enough.
They're stabbing zombies with a Confederate flag.
Exactly.
Go back to the north, you heathens.
What I'm saying is, but with The Walking Dead, it's not like I was saying, watching the show for zombies, but it's nice to know that they're taking those characters who are supposed to be from a very specific region in the South seriously enough to where I don't feel like they're being stereotyped. I guess if there's one thought that I want to leave this episode on, it's that it's better to look at the South, like you were saying, as an abstract thought. Mm-hmm. It's better when you have characters that aren't good old boys going out and having a good old time and drinking beer. You know, if you ever saw the movie Winter's Bone that takes place in the mountains of North Carolina, you know, you're dealing with very backwoods people, so obviously there's going to be some stereotyping going on, but for the most part, it's actually very accurate to how
I mean, but
certain
when you
lives
get
are.
to like the backwoods and stuff, not to quote a movie, there's people in them mountains that ain't never seen a town before, you know?
Yeah, there are, and you get that in that movie too, is the fact that, you know, that they have their own set of rules basically,
Yeah.
and you know, I appreciated that about that movie, is that they showed that side of it without
Which movie is this?
Winter's Bone. They showed that side of it without relying too heavily on existing stereotypes or, you know, characters that are more morally sound. You know, there's a lot of moral ambiguity in that movie. The kind of movie that we would want to make for the South, the kind of thing that you and I would want to do, would be something that would be more along the lines of how we grew up, as opposed to how other people think we grew up, because we grew up.
Have you ever heard of
the
a
South.
NASCAR Rita?
A NASCAR Rita?
Yeah.
What is that?
It's a margarita
Uh-huh.
made with tequila,
Mm-hmm.
Sundrop,
Mm-hmm.
and salt.
Yep, that sounds about right. Sundrop is also a religion down here.
I like Sundrop.
I do too.
I like it more than Mountain Dew. The Sundrop actually has a higher caffeine content than Mountain Dew.
I believe it. It tastes better than Mountain Dew, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But see, that's the thing. We like things from the South.
Yeah.
We like certain aspects of the culture. I love barbecue.
Yeah.
I love ribs. I don't know if that's... yeah, I guess that counts as the South. I love hush puppies. But that goes with barbecue. But but I think that it's possible to embrace certain parts of the stereotypes without giving into the idea that I have to be a good old boy or you have to be a good old boy or something like that.
Yeah.